everybody, to the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. I'm Jeff Gronemeyer, and today I am substituting and filling in for Julie Podowitz, who is obviously the CEO and founder of Grow Your Occupancy. I'm lucky enough to be hosting this particular episode with David Smith. He's a sales director and many other hats, I'm sure, with New Perspective Senior Living. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. I know we had a chance to connect a little bit down in Nashville at one of Julie's masterclass sales trainings. It was a great time for me. I hope it was a great time for you.
Yeah, we had, man, it was terrific. I really left that training, really filled up and invigorated and encouraged, frankly. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, invigorated, encouraged. Those are great words. So for everybody listening, I know, out there in the senior living world, a lot of people are obviously aware of New Perspective. They're probably aware of you as well, some of the people you work for. But let's give everybody a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit, maybe what you've done, how long you've been in senior living, a little bit about New Perspective, and kind of where you're situated right now in terms of your role.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jeff. So New Perspective is based here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. I've lived here for going on 30 years, but my career started about 34 years ago, back in my home state of Pennsylvania. And really, I spent the first 30 of those years more in an operations capacity, mostly as an executive director in various communities. Did that for a few years in Pennsylvania. I transitioned briefly to Florida. And then the big question that I get from people is, well, why in the heck would you move from Florida to, the frozen tundra of Minnesota? And I did so for family considerations, but, going on 30 years later, it's still a great place to live. And the Twin Cities in particular is a hotbed for senior housing and assisted living, as a lot of people are aware of. About 4.5 years ago, I finally decided what I wanted to do when I grew up, and made the decision to move out of the operations area. And it didn't really take me long to figure out that the sales arena was really the best fit for me. It had always been a really enjoyable part of being an ED, when you step in ad hoc, and you come alongside families and help them through the process. And in many cases, really being the answer for them. And so it was a natural fit. And in the last 4.5 years has been probably the greatest time in my professional life. And so at here in my mid 60s, that's saying something, I think. But it's been great, and I don't have any intentions of stopping anytime soon, frankly. So.
That's an awesome story. Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that point about coming from the operations side over to the sales side. I think many of us are very familiar with the opposite, transition. I started as a senior, as a CRD or sales director, and then end up being an ED and kind of go that direction. How do you think, and I did the same thing. I was in sales, I jumped into operations. So I'm interested in how this impacted you. What do you think the benefit of that experience was? So as a salesperson now, how do you think that operational insight is making you, or has made you better in understanding or performing in the sales side of our industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I see everything that we do in our communities as an integrated effort. There are a lot of different areas of our operation. And to have, coming from the role of an ED and having to pay so much attention to all the matters that that hit you day to day, and in everything from finance to resident satisfaction to leading a team and all of those kinds of things. Once you get into the role of that I'm in now, it just gives me so much more of a balanced approach to this, because I know that the last thing that I want to do as a sales director is to be stuck kind of in a disconnected silo and think that the whole world revolves around what I do, and that is not the truth. The truth is that it does take a village to do what we do, and I every sales director that comes my way that I have a chance to provide a little bit of coaching and mentoring, I say the same thing, man. Team is everything, and when your prospective residents and their families walk through the door, and you've got a really functional together group of people working shoulder to shoulder, that's palpable, and you can feel that. So coming out of the operational side into the sales role, that hit me right away, and it's true every single day. So
Yeah, I felt like, for me, having had that operational experience, it was very similar to what you just shared. A clear perspective of how we really all do work together,
yeah,
versus that the idea of, and you've probably heard this, the argument of what's most important, right? Clinical operations, and clinical is part of the operations and sales. Everybody who's leading something in our industry is leading something that's not easy to do, to provide the service, to train people to do, the levels that of excellence that we all look for. And when you have that ability to see it all as a village, your comment takes a village. I think that's, really beneficial, impactful, and insightful. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's that. There should be more of that. I certainly, anybody listening on this webinar, I encourage you to trial out a little bit of that operations role too, if you're going to be in the sales side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that. And yeah, the more that you can recognize that, everybody's got a lane to stay within. But it's not the same as, being a group of 7 or 8 or 10 silos that are disconnected. If you're going to have those silos, you better have a lot of hallways and tunnels and bridges, connecting each other, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. I think Julie likes to talk about our operations holistically, like, a wagon wheel, where you've got the hub, and then all of these departments, all of these services, all of the things that we do, they're that important spoke. And you have to have that strong connection, right, between that hub and the outer wheel. Otherwise, it all falls down, and you might be able to get by a little bit if one of them's off. But once you start getting too many not working right, then the imbalance happens. So that's really important.
Yeah.
Which is a good segue. So, we're always trying to learn, and you and I got a chance to meet, like I mentioned at the top, down in Nashville for a master class. Off the cuff, what motivated you when you saw, hey, this is a class that's going on? What motivated somebody with your level of background, experience, knowledge in this industry to say, I'm going to take a couple days, go to Nashville and see what this is all about?
Yeah, well, so it started with an invitation from my district director of sales, Melody, who was there with me, you met. And she said, what would you think about Nashville? And I thought two things. One, I actually really like traveling, and it was a good chance to, step out of the day-to-day for a few days and just, just fly into a different city and just be part of a different scene for part of a week. But then secondly, the purpose for that, which was, get in and among other sales directors from other parts of the country, and rub shoulders with people that, many of whom are doing the exact same work that we're doing, all of them really in a lot of respects, but then also being led by Julie and her interdisciplinary team through that masterclass, through a whole program. That kind of thing always appeals to me because, I'm a lifelong learner. So even at the age that I am, which I guess I don't really need to talk about, but I can just tell you that if there ever comes a point where I don't have a hunger and a thirst for that, that's when I'm kind of dead in the water, frankly. If you ever walk into any community or wherever you are and think you've got it all figured out and that you've absorbed every possible thing that you can, I'm just telling you flat out, that's not the truth. We can gain so much just from being with other people who are doing the same work, and then also being led by somebody like Julie, who has really dedicated her career and now her organization, Grow Your Occupancy, to doing this very thing. So
Yeah, I have to agree with that, point that you share, the chance to kind of rub elbows, spend some time listening to other people talk. I mean, we get a lot of conversation in our own organizations. I'm sure, Melody, you and David and others in the sales organization, A New Perspective, you're always talking and sharing. What are our challenges? What are our goals? How are we going to get there? But even as wide as that net is, it can be limited and by perspective. It's our operation, it's our cities and states, it's our building types. When you get to a class like that, you do get to hear from all the other people, different kinds of buildings, different experience levels. With that, thinking it along those lines, what impacted you? Like, was there an aha moment from somebody or a specific takeaway that maybe that kind of illustrated that point of going, wow, I maybe had forgotten that or heard it, something along those lines, that being in that group would have brought that to the forefront for you?
Yeah, there were a lot of times through the 2 days when I was reminded of something or just heard something new, or a certain perspective. But there was one thing that we did as a group that Melody and I both agreed was stood out, and that was when we did a little bit of role playing. As you recall, Jeff, we had some fun, part of the second day, just kind of creating a scenario, and one person would play the prospective resident or the family member, and then another person would play the role of the sales director. Something that we do every day in our jobs, but now we are role playing. It's a little bit like afternoon at the Improv, and for people that have a little bit of drama experience, theater experience, that I actually do. It's not an uncomfortable thing for me to do something like that, but for a lot of people, it's a little frightening. What, you want me to do? What exactly? But so we at New Perspective, we one of the sales activities that we do a lot of is prospect case studies, where we'll actually take the story of somebody that we've been working with and ask a lot of questions about where are they in the sales process, where are they in their readiness to make a transition from home to a supportive community, what's the story, what are the details, and it leads us to really what's the next step for them in helping them to advance. I saw the role playing as a way to enhance the prospect case studies. I saw the role playing as a whole other layer of that, where not only are you talking about it, but you're really simulating it. So we had the second one that we did was one that Jeff, you and I were actually engaged in together, right?
I think I'm divorced. I moved into the community, and my much younger partner has left me for a more vibrant life.
Yeah, she moved on, but that was what I was faced. So I played the sales director, and you were the older prospective resident who was ready to move in, but a much younger wife who was clearly not. And lest we think that we're never going to be confronted with something like that, you can get confronted by all kinds of things, And so the fun of that role play was that, we created this safe space to say, look, this is just, we're doing this as an exercise. Somebody step up and be bold and take on the role. And after a little bit of nudging, I did, right? And so we got to the point, and I was kind of clipping along okay with the questions and getting the answers, but I got to a point where I didn't know where to go with it. And so I was able in that moment to stop the simulation and then say to the group, guys, I'm stuck here.
Right.
I don't actually really know where I would go with this. What do you all think? And then we had some really good input from other people about some possible ways to go. And the reason it was so helpful and instructive is because you get a room of, I don't know how many people we had there, Jeff, maybe 30 people or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to get all kinds of viewpoints and perspectives and some real creativity and insight. And I can tell you for a fact that in that role play and the one that we did previous, I was going, man, I don't know that I would have quite thought of that on my own. And the thing about it is, as a sales director, we are pretty much on our own with those families every time. So this was a way to, I guess, thinking back to, the old Batman days where you're just kind of adding tools to the utility belt, frankly. And so Mel and I looked at each other and said, man, we got to do more of this kind of thing in our organization. And that's what we've started to do on some of our district sales calls. Is we've started to do some role playing and trying to kind of teach our fellow sales directors the value of just getting this kind of perspective and input. So it was amazing, actually. And we loved it, frankly. So.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing that. The role plays are fun in classes like that to do and participate in. And, I'll tell you too, I think it ties into two things. One, whoever's doing it, you learn something, whether you're an attendee or whether you're one of Julie's team. Like you said, there's so much coming out that there's always something new to learn. And I think that speaks to the value of a coach. I thought about this last night when I was watching the Buccaneers and the Cowboys play, and there's Tom Brady, and you think if there's a guy who probably doesn't need a coach, maybe he's him. But then you see the struggles, and you realize even somebody as accomplished as Tom, as with all the records and all the things they were putting up, that coaching's still important. And it sounds like you kind of have that same feeling, is that coaching aspect, that chance to share and do those kinds of practice role plays where the game isn't on the line, where a move-in isn't lost because we didn't come up with the right thing, can really make a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of creating that safe space. And it's also, giving sales directors practice, frankly, in guiding these conversations, because we get into, as Jeff, just about the time where you think you've seen every possible kind of family or situation or dysfunction come your way, a new one pops up and you go, yeah, I'm reminded, I've not seen everything and I'm not likely to.
Right. Yeah, every generation that comes to us, 5 to 7 years is a new kind of group of people with new dynamics. I was just telling this to somebody the other day. I started in, this industry when it was the yellow pages and a newspaper. And now here we are with video tours. And that's changed how people want to speak to us, what they expect from us as sales directors and things along those lines. So that's really good. So if you were going to, talk to somebody, or somebody was asking you, hey, what do you think you could do to help your career get better? Would classes like this be something you recommend? What would be your recommendation, and maybe why would you tell them that it's worth their time to invest in themselves and or their company to invest in for these kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. I without hesitation, I would, minimally, I would give 2 bits of advice to somebody who is either new or relatively new stepping into this role, but even somebody who's got, a bit of, stuff under their belt. Number one, occasionally, maybe it's a yearly thing or something, get yourself into some kind of formalized training, a 2-day. If you have the opportunity to travel a bit so that you can clear your headspace and not be encumbered with, oh yeah, I'm going to check what's going on in the community because I'm right next door or whatever. If you can do that, if your organization would allow for that and have the means to let you do that, I think it's really just kind of helps to fill your bucket. there's just no question that that kind of environment, and particularly what I see Julie putting together in her master classes, having a group of people, and not only her leading it, but other people stepping in, like you were there, Jeff, and a few of the others who I won't attempt any names because I'm going to forget somebody, but everybody came at it from their own expertise and their own area of influence and so forth. And if you come to something like that with the idea that I am going to come away with something, you simply will come away with things that you're going to be able to utilize, either things that you can change in your pattern or your rhythm or your cadence, or things that you can things that you're already doing but you need reminders of, or you need to bolster. Grow Your Occupancy was it was a terrific 2-day training, and I've been through a number of things, and it was one that was near at or near the top of the ones that I've been part of. And then the second bit of advice would be find somebody who you would identify as a mentor, somebody that you can be accountable to. A lot of organizations have that built in. I have Melody, who's our district director of sales, and the level of trust and synergy that I have with her just makes it so much greater for me as a person out here in a community. I don't ever feel like I'm alone sitting out on an island. There's tremendous support, guidance if I need it, but there's also accountability, frankly, because when your organization is going to identify these are your key sales activities, these are your key metrics, things that if you do this, you're going to have success. The accountability piece of that, I think, is important, and we have that at New Perspective.
Yeah, those are great shares. And I would say from my own personal experience, I agree completely. I was never so happy when I did identify a couple of strong mentors, people that I could reach out to in those moments where you wonder, what's the right thing, or am I seeing things the way I should see them? A mentor is one of the people that said, you should really take a step across the line and work in operations as an ED for a short period of time to, again, better understand exactly what a building is and what's going through somebody's mind and what their motivations and accountabilities are. So, that was a great example. And then, of course, with the sales coaching, I think, to reiterate some of the things you shared, a class like that where there's multiple levels of experience, where there's people who are coming at our industry from various things. I know, we had people coming from vendor positions that sell and service, products to senior housing. We had operators, we had straight marketers, we had salespeople, everybody being able to lend that in. And I think hopefully while you were there too, it gave you a chance to create some connections that become those linear conversations that you can have and reach out, whether it's from LinkedIn or, other industry events that we go to. I think that holistically creates some value as well.
I think so. Yeah. As you think about just building a network of people, and LinkedIn's a good example. I think we were done with the session and probably same day, you and I connected on LinkedIn.
Right.
I think I was already connected with Julie, and there's one or two other people that I connected with right away. And that's actually a really wonderful thing to know, that you've got some friends across the country. And frankly, coming out of that kind of an experience, people you could even reach out to say, hey, I've been thinking about this, or what do you think about this kind of thing? And know that you're probably going to get some response to that, frankly. So.
Yeah. It was, that's a huge benefit of coming to those. And, I was also impressed with how it flowed. It didn't feel like ever there was this gap where I put my hand, in my head and said, yeah, I've only heard this 100,000 times.
Right.
Even if it was information I heard before, it was still, I think, to your point, the dynamic of how it was being delivered. And I tell this to my kids, who are not kids anymore. I should, fully on young adults, but when they would say, well, you've already told me that type of thing. I think hearing the same message in multiple ways, delivered in with multiple strategies, like you said, with, I could tell you how to do a call, but then to role play it is a different strategic way to learn something.
Right.
I think constantly having those inputs is good. And hopefully that's what you felt, that kind of training in class was delivering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I knew inside of 5 or 10 minutes in that room, with Julie's leadership, but just meeting everybody else and hearing other people speak, that we were, kind of really sharing the same idea about what is really successful in senior housing sales. And that is that it is a very relational kind of a thing that we do. I tell people it's 100% relational. There's a transaction that you're going for, but the core of it is not transactional like out in the used car lot. The core of it is relational, and how you come alongside families and help them through this sometimes excruciatingly difficult thing they're going through. And it's true today, it was true yesterday, and it's going to be true tomorrow. And I think that if a salesperson really knows that and is committed to that, they would say the same thing, that keep telling me, keep reminding me, because it's very easy to kind of fall into that, a few bad habits and oh my goodness, my numbers are down and I'm going to have to scramble. And next thing you know, it becomes transactional and you're trying to get somebody into, something off the used car lot. And it's just not how we do our work. It just doesn't work that way. So a lot of best practices were not only, shared, but it's just healthy to keep hearing this over and over again. Somebody said once, we got to stop listening to ourselves and start preaching to ourselves, right? And I think think about that. I think that's, so the more that we can kind of fill our buckets with what we know to be true about how we do our work, I think the better it is going to be for us, our organizations, our communities. So,
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that was a very powerful way to put it. And I'm 100% behind everything you just shared there, for sure. It's an important job. It's a hard job. And, again, anything that you can do to try to make it better, make it more effective, and ultimately at the end of the day, make it something that the prospects and the families that we talk to can manage and get through and complete the journey in the way that's most meaningful to them. Whether that's moving in or not, as long as they can at least complete the journey in a way that the outcome is what they can accept, then we've done a good job. And that's no small feat. So I know we're, getting close to the end of time. You probably got to get back and work on some move-ins and everything else. But I first wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast and talk with us a little bit about, you and your perspective. And thank you for sharing so many insights with, the people that listen to this podcast. That's the first part. More importantly, thank you for, everything you brought to the class, being willing to jump in. I think it says a lot about you and what you are about when you said in this, our conversation here, I got to a point where I didn't know the answer anymore. I get there a lot in a lot of different reasons. And that's a really important thing. I think if anybody, my hope takes away from this podcast is we don't ever always have every answer. And being able to acknowledge that's important. So I really appreciate that. I will share with everybody on the podcast, make sure you check out Grow Your Occupancy. It's online. It's on the YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe when you go and check out Julie and Grow Your Occupancy on YouTube, so you can get all the great people she talks to. Normally, 99% of the time, you get Julie's quality. You don't get the substitute co-host like I am, but it was an honor for me to be able to sit in, and certainly great to see you again, David. Hopefully, you get a chance to come to another one in the future. You think she does them once a quarter or even more than that. So hopefully you and your team can continue to benefit, and obviously always reach out to us, right? We're always here for you no matter what you need, friendship or professionally.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, Jeff. appreciate the invitation, and it was fun to see you again and just chat through and kind of remember what our experience was a couple of months ago. So I would love to, and I anticipate that at some point we'll meet up again a little down the road. So
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll have to keep our one-upping on the Star Wars gear going. So I'm down one currently. I'm gonna have to work on coming up with something to take over for the figurines.
absolutely.
All right.
Well, I think your Lego model is pretty awesome, though. I got to say that. So
Well, I got to give that credit to my son, but yeah, it was fun to have over Christmas. So yeah, that was a great thing to share there as we were coming online. So
yeah,
have a great afternoon. Thanks again, David, for everything, and everybody out there watching the podcast. We appreciate you. Look forward to meeting everybody soon someday, and helping you with your roles and whatever else we can.
thank you.
Take care. Bye.
All right, bye.